We're bringing developing news.
And the stories behind the headlines. This is Storycon. I'm Patrick Paez.
I'm Ed Lingao. Some stories we're watching this Thursday, the 4th of July. Agence France-Presse is reporting that a U.S. mid-range missile system deployed in the Philippines will be pulled out. The Typhoon missile system was deployed in April for the 2024 Balita exercises. It is the same system that had angered China.
Not just China, but apparently Putin has taken note also.
Russia as well. The armed forces says it will seek more details on the alleged plan of China to send hypersonic missiles. Parang courier service lang to 25 areas in the Philippines. The claim was made by Senator Jaime Marcos in her social media page on July 1st. The president's sister said the move was a response to the increased U.S. military sites in the country under the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, or
Let's
EDCA.
paraphrase that a bit. It's not plans to send the missiles here, pero I think there are 25 spots in the Philippines. Supposedly targeted or in the range or whatever. And Senator Nancy Binay condemns the remarks made by Senator Alan Peter Cayetano in a hearing yesterday. Cayetano accused Binay of feeding reporters questions to link the issue of the new Senate building's construction to the territorial row between the cities of Taguig and Makati. Binay is reportedly considering an ethics complaint against Cayetano. Now joining us today, Ana Marie Pamintuan, Editor-in-Chief of the Philippine Star, and
In spirit.
wala.
Si Ronald,
I think he's on his way home. On his way home, okay.
But we can feel you. We can feel you.
Ami, before we jump into the front pages of the Philippine Star, alam mo ba, Bok, yung sa totoo lang, sa 1PH at saka TBS had to change their lineup yesterday.
Bakit?
Because of one story.
Ayun, Cayetano.
Etong Cayetano and Nancy Binay exchange. Now, medyo na-miss natin ng konti, no? Kaya eto, ayaw natin magpahuli. So unahin na natin to.
Palabas muna natin?
Panoorin natin ulit. Yung naging pali. I imagine that this would probably count as one of the longest exchanges in the Senate.
Yung chairman who usually is supposed to say order, or let's recess, siya yung
Ayun. Okay, tama. It had to take some intervening from a member of the committee, si Robin Padilla.
Si Robin to rescue.
Okay, panoorin natin.
Ba't galit na galit sa akin ngayon na nire-review ko yung amount na yan?
Ang goal ko lang matapos ang building na to.
15 buwan yung
Hindi
pastry
siya
sa mesa mo, wala kang ginawa.
Sir,
Records
answer
to
to
ng
me.
SCT, Senator Binay, that was given to me by the SCT. Who are your staff?
Yes. Wait,
So what's the problem? No, ma'am, ginugulo mo yung hearing wala namang kailangang magulo. Yan ang sinabmit sa akin. So kung sasabihin mo mali, edi ano yung tamang number? No, ang problema sa iyo, you keep going around saying, gusto ko makausap si Alan, gusto ko makausap si Cheese. Nagkita pa tayo sa party, may cellphone, hindi mo naman kami kinakausap, tapos manggugulo ka ngayon sa hearing. Ikaw yung pumupunta sa media, sa radyo, kung ano-anong paninira, kung ano sinasabi mo sa akin. Sabi mo, may sumasaksak sa likod mo, edi kasuhan mo ng attempted murder. Sino ba sumasaksak sa likod mo? Sasabihin mo sa media, may kilalaman to sa Taguig at Makati. Tapos sasabihin mo, may sumasaksak sa likod mo. Ano iisipin nila?
Pero
Hindi
sinabi
naman
ko ba na
marites.
Alan Peter Cayetano ang
Hindi.
sumasaksak
Pero-
sa akin? Parang, di ba sabi nila yung pag nagre-react ng ganyan, baka guilty.
Ma'am, basta sasabihin ko sa iyo, Lourdes ang pangalan mo, hindi Marites.
I made my point. There's no such thing as 23 billion sa
Paulit-ulit na tayo,
DPWH.
kanina
Thank
pa,
you,
na
Mr. Chair.
21.7 billion. Kabuang Kanaday. Tapusin natin na maayos to, Senado to ng Pilipinas, hindi to palengke.
Malaki akong tanong na sana may makasagot.
Okay.
Ano kaya kinakain ni Robin?
Alam ni Joby yun. Alam ni Joby. Na-research na ni Joby Francisca kapon sa mga Senate report. Talaga napatawag si Joby eh. Joby, ano yun?
It's a boxed meal na merong banana cake, banana
Lapit ka, Joby.
banana
bread.
spaghetti or
Spaghetti,
pasta.
oy.
At saka, it's either chicken or beef. Pero ang sabi nila, chicken daw yung kinakain ni Senator Robin.
Mukhang malakas yung nguya niya, no?
Tsaka
Siguro
may
na-tense,
bigote
na-tense.
kasi kaya kita mo yung ano eh, yung galaw. Tayo na punta doon.
Masaya. Sabi niyo, no?
Yun nga di ba? Typically, after a few seconds ng bakbakan, the chairman steps in and says, order, let's break to recess.
Break to recess.
But in this case, the chairman was not engaged. I'm sorry. It's not supposed to be.
Okay, Ami, may mga marites ba na nakarating dyan sa inyo about this hearing from your reporters?
May buwelta si doon, Nancy Bina, yung wala tayo sa palengke. Sabi niya, dinidenigrate daw ba ni Alan Peter yung mga market vendor. kaya pareho tayo ng binabantayan nga. She is considering filing a complaint against the chairman of the committee sa ethics committee. So tingnan natin kung anong kalabasan yan. I understand si Senator Tolentino yata yung chairman ngayon ng ethics committee, no? Yan ang inaabangan natin ngayon kung merong ma-file.
Siguro palamanan natin ng konti kasi nagbakbakan sila pero hindi ganun kaklaro dun sa soundbites kung anong pinag-aawayan maliban dun sa sa costing. Pero ano exactly pinag-aawayan?
Hindi kasi pumasok si Senator Binay, di ba? Nung una naghi-hearing sila Alan Peter tapos yun na nga napunta dun sa overpricing daw. Pumasok si Nancy Binay. At yun na nga, kinaklaro niya na ganito, saan ba nakuha yung, she has been asking that question actually, saan ba nanggaling yung mga figures niya. Sinabi na nga ng DPWH na hindi tama naman daw yung figures at para nga daw dun sa mga interiors yung dagdag na presyo. Nasabihan na rin yata ni Alan Peter, the DPWH official daw was forced to apologize dahil yun na nga, ang unang sinabi daw, dahil hindi ko naman na-monitor ng gusto, ang una daw sinabi, tama naman yung figures na original nila, yung grupo nila Nancy Binay when they were the ones in charge of this committee. Kaya, nung nagbago, sabi, nag-apologize. Kaya yun yata yung at that point na pumasok si Senator Binay.
Actually, ang na-monitor ko from that hearing, Ami, Ed, is that Senator Nancy Binay was trying to clarify that it's not 23 billion.
It's 21.
Yung ballooning. It's 21 point something billion. In a sense, malayo pa rin dun sa original 9 billion. At saka konti lang diferensya ng 21 point something billion sa 23.
Sa kanila, sa atin ba?
Malaking bagay, sa atin malaking bagay yun.
Ilang billion yun?
So
Saka pinag-uusapan yung delay, di ba? Matagal na daw yung delay. Sinabi rin ng DPWH, dahil nga sa pandemic, nagka-delay. Pero bilang ni Alan Peter, ilang araw na yan delay, ang haba-haba na. Kaya ganyan, talaga medyo nagkakainitan na sila.
But are we quibbling over who has the right figure, whether it's 21 or 23 point something, or are we?
Pati yung malaking pati yung sa interiors ba yon?
Interior,
Yun yung isa sa mga explanation na kaya ganyang kalaki ang tingin nyo dahil yung original, puwera pa yung something 10 something billion For yun na nga, yung mga gamit ng mga senador.
Baka yung susunod natin na resource, mas may detalye dyan sa kwento na yan. Isalin natin sa kwentuhan si News 5 Senate Correspondent, Mayan Los Baños. Mayan!
Ano raw, masarap na yung manok?
Unang tanong, Mayan, bago mo sagutin yung mga may importanteng detalye, masarap ba yung pansit? O spaghetti ata yun.
Spaghetti yun.
Grabe, nakarating pala sa inyo yan.
Kasi pagkatapos nung palitan, nagpa-spaghetti o nagpapansit si Senator Cayetano sa media. Ayan.
Naku, ang problema kasi nun, Sir P, sobrang late na kung maalala nyo kahapon, di ba? Pasado 4:00 na matapos. So, hindi na ako, sa totoo lang, di ako nakatikim kasi naghahabol akong makaabot yung script ko.
Siyempre, mas importante sa pansit yun.
Oo, mas importante sa pansit. Baka mapagalitan
tayo. Pwede ko naman baon, di ba?
Hindi ako nakapag-Sharon, Sir Ed Sayang. Joke lang.
Ayun. Sige, go. Ikaw na.
Linawin ko lang kasi 3 phases ito, Sir Ed, Ma'am, Phase 1, Phase 2. Yung Phase 1 yung 8.9 billion, Phase 2 yung more than 2 billion. Wala nang magagawa dyan sila Senate President Escudero kasi bidded out na yan. Yeah. Ang hinahabol na lang sa review ni Senator Alan Cayetano yung 10 billion na Phase 3. Kasi dyan na lang sila pwedeng gumalaw kung pwede bang pababain pa yan. Pero yun nga, tama yung sinabi ni Ma'am Ami kanina and ninyo po na parang ang difference lang naman talaga ay around 2 billion. Ang sinasabi kasi ni Senator Nancy, huwag mong isama sa computation yung lote. Kasi ang pinag-uusapan natin, kasi hindi yan hawak ng DPWH. Sabi niya, kung DPWH ang tatanungin mo, 21.7 billion lang. Pero sinasabi ni Senator Alan, paano ka nagpagawa ng isang building na hindi mo isasama yung presyo ng lote? So dapat isama mo yun. That's why may 23 billion na pinag-uusapan. Yun.
So 21 point something billion is the building and construction and interiors at saka kung ano-ano pa. Yung 2 billion difference, kaya naging 23, is bayad sa lote.
Yes, around
Yun.
1.6. Parang hiningi ko yung mismong kanina nakipag-usap ako kay Senate President Jesus Cordero kanina, kaya lang ayaw niya magpa-on cam kasi sabi niya this is between Senator Nancy and Senator Alan. Pero dinitalya niya nga sa akin yan na hindi na pala nila, wala na silang magagawa sa phase 1 and phase 2. The phase 1 is the core or shell, yung structure. Phase 2 is the fitting na tinatawag. Wala, build it out na yan. Wala na sila magagawa dyan.
But,
Yung phase 3.
Yeah, Mayan, when this story first broke out, the original amount that was being quoted was 9 billion ang original cost ng project. Kaya nung lumabas yung 23 billion, that was supposedly the ballooning from 9 billion to 23. So ano tong 9 billion? Di ba dapat parang ang intindi namin is at 9 billion pesos, tapos na yan.
Yes. Kahit kasi, sir, at tandaan natin, galing pa to sa time ni dating Senate President Tito Soto, at account committee chair nung time na yun, Senator Bing Lacson, nasa 8 to 9 billion lang talaga yung original cost. Pero dahil nga, intindido naman din, even nila Senator Alan, na as we go through yung pag-construct, madadagdag at madadagdag. Pero isa kasi sa lumutang din sa hearing kahapon na ang sayang kasi natabunan dahil doon sa away, isa sa lumutang, isa sa talagang nagpapalaki ng cost, ang daming revision, Sir P, Sir Ed, and Ma'am Ami. Parang 5 revisions. Doon sa isang nakita kong dokumento, because of the 5 revisions sa plano, nagkaroon sila ng plus 500 million on certain aspect lang of the building. Kaya ang sinasabi ni Senator Alan, bakit ganun? Pa-revise tayo ng pa-revise ng plano. Ang lumabas, hindi pala nag-uusap yung nagde-design ng building at ang Senado. So ngayon, pag nakakarating sa Senate yung plan, merong ayaw, kunyari si Senator Nancy, papabago, or kung sino man sa Accounts Committee. Kaya nagkakaganon. Lalong lumalaki yung presyo. Plus yun nga. Go ahead, ma'am.
Sino yung nagre-revise ng plano? DPWH ang in charge dyan, di ba? Yung designer ba, yung contractor, o yung
Yung mga senador.
Yung mga senador.
Yung DPWH, o nagsasuggest ba yung mga senador?
Ang malabo po kasi, Ma'am Ami, ganito. Parang di ba may project management office coming from DPWH? Parang sila na lang yung nakikipag-usap dun sa nagde-design. Yung Hillmarks kasi, kumuha pa sila ng ibang pang company to design the building Ang pangalan daw ng company na yan ay IDEA. Ang sinasabi ni Senator Alan, yung IDEA na yan, nakipag-usap ba yan sa mga senator? Sabi ng DPWH, hindi. Sabi niya, kinonsulta ba yan ang mga Senate employees? Hindi rin. So for example, Ma'am Ami, yung detalye lang nito. For example, may isa daw, kunyari daw sa offices, lalagyan nila ng isang room para sa director. Tapos magre-reklamo ngayon yung mga, for example, yung certain departments ng Senate ngayon, kasi may mga department na 3 ang director, 5 ang director. So babaguhin na naman ngayon yun. Yun yung mga variations and revisions.
ang nagbabaluntong cost na to dahil sa mga requirements ng mga mag-oopisina dyan. So it's really all about this phase 3, 10 billion is all about the furnishings, the interiors, etc., etc.
Hindi malinaw kung yung buong 10B, Sir P, dahil lang sa differences. Pero isa sa kahapon, kasi since first hearing pa lang naman, isa yun sa parang lumalabas na nagpapadagdag ng presyo. Yung paulit-ulit pa-revise ng pa-revise, kasi nagdadagdag din ng presyo yung contractor kasi na-extend yung days of work nila
Pero
Imbis na dapat
Pero
may budget lang.
may sinong
understanding from
humihingi
you.
ng revision? Saka sinong nag-a-approve? Sino yung approving
Senate po.
authority? Sino yung nag-request? Saka pwede bang basta-basta yun? May kontrata yan Anong process doon para ka magpa-revise ng kontrata? 500 million madadagdag, sobrang laki nun.
Correct. Yun po yung kahapon na hindi masyado pang naliwanagan. Pero pinakita kasi ni Senator Alan Cayetano na dapat ganito yung process nyo. Dapat in between, nakikipag-usap kayo sa Senate. Yun yung missing link.
Yeah.
Parang dumidiretsong usap yung designer, contractor, at yung PMO DPWH. Parang binibigay na lang nila yung final plan sa Senate nang walang consultation. Yun yung lumalabas kahapon.
Bok, ibig mo
Ah.
sabihin, ano?
So,
Ibig mo sabihin yung...
DPWH yung approving authority. DPWH,
Opo.
di ba?
Kasi po sila yung nagmamanage eh. Sila yung PMO, so yes.
Yeah, understand mo. Pero ibig mo sabihin, Bok, na yung DPWH ay kusang nagre-revise ng walang konsultasyon o pressure from the
Oo,
senators.
nga eh.
Parang ang hirap naman
Magulo,
i-imagine nyo
oo.
na nagkukusa lang DPWH, magdagdag pa tayo nito, magdagdag pa tayo ng ganun. At yung mga senador, ano nangyayari doon? Ba't gumaganda ata yung building natin?
Bakit ka nag-submit ka pa ng plano? Para ano yun?
Opo. Hindi ako sure, Sir Ed, kung sa buong building ganun yung nangyari. Malinaw talaga dun sa document kahapon at sunagot ni Yusek sa DAIN na sinabi, nung tinanong siya ni Senator Alan na, yung ideya na yan, yung gumagawa ng design, kinausap niyo ba yung senator? Sabi, no, none, walang pag-uusap. And yung ideya, wala ring consultation with the Senate employees. That's why yung detalye, for example, sa mga rooms, hindi nagpapareho sa needs ng senators at ng mga Senate employees. So yun nga, may 500
It's really all
million
about the
so far na
furnishings.
dagdag.
When they're talking about details, no, Mayan, it's really about the furnishings. Siguro gusto may magandang opisina. I don't know, no. But really, cost would jump
Pero
because of
sinasabi
that.
ni Mayan,
no?
hindi kinukonsulta yung senators about it, about yung furnishings. At nagbabalo ng kusa. Parang,
Baka hindi sinabihan ngayon, pala ito gusto na
DPWH
senador.
lang eh.
It sounded like that to me kasi when we saw the the report from the committee of Senator Alan Peter Cayetano, there were some details, at least general details, issues on redesign. Okay, that's one. I don't think it has to do with structural redesign kasi tapos yung building,
Hindi na,
Hindi naman siguro yan, So it's really the details, the furnishings, okay? Mga siguro, gusto magandang kortina, magandang tiles, o magandang wood siguro yung mga interiors, o I don't know, no? Baka may jacuzzi, magandang banyo. That would really push up costs.
Yeah.
Okay, the other thing is, dun sa report ni ni Senator Cayetano is that may mga questions pa, and yet, despite that, questions on quality.
But that was my
pushing the
question to
price
you,
up.
Mayan, kanina so who is pushing for all these revisions, all these
nga eh.
improvements, whether cortina or jacuzzi or whatever they are, who is the person or the group that is making all these decisions to add on all these other expenses? Is it the staff, the senators, or yung DPWH o yung designer? I mean, di ba? Hindi naman nila pera yun eh.
Correct. Hindi, Sir Ed, dahil nga sa nangyari kahapon, hindi iyan masyadong na detalye, pero lumalabas nga na may mga decisions na nagawa na yung PMO and DPWH na nung nandun na, tsaka lang nakita nung kinonsulta yung Senate na, bakit isa lang yung room ng director?
Bakit
Itong
isa
department
lang?
na
May
to,
mga
tatlo
additional
director.
requirements, Bob.
Parang ganon. Yun. Tapos,
It sounds
isa
like
pa-
additional requirements, Mayan, coming from the senators.
Yes, additional requirements and yung pagtatama ng pangailangan nila. Mukhang hindi tumutugma. And siguro, sir, idagdag ko lang, isa pang sinasabing nakakadagdag doon sa presyo is katulad nung sinasabi yung landscaping ng mismong buong building, 600 million pesos. March 2023 para binigay ni
Landscaping?
Senator Nancy. Wala daw balik. Hindi sila binalikan. So parang ang sinasabi ngayon is ang tagal. Baka nakakadagdag sa delay yung matagal na pag-approve. Kaya dun sila, isa yung sa point na pinag-awayan nila. Nasa nasabi Senator Alan, 15 months kang nagre-review?
Pero teka po, balik mo lang, landscaping 600 million?
Yes.
Oo nga.
Higit kalating bilyon ang magpapatubo ka ng
Sobrang pagkaplantita
magandang
yan.
halaman. Ewan ko lang. May just sinik ka.
Mahal ngayon mga halaman ng mga plantito, Bob.
Magsabog ka na ng carbon grass. Hindi kasi 600 million. Ang budget ng deep... million, hindi naman billion eh. Pero
Mayan, confirm ba yung
Ayun
presyo
na.
nila 600 million? Kasi baka yan ang headline bukas sa maraming dyaryo. 600 million for landscaping.
Landscaping, yes. And then, sir, meron pa nga meron pang 200 million na nabanggit si Senator Alan kahapon
Para
sa
sa?
CCTV. Sabi niya, CCTV. So sabi niya, ano
200
yan, buong Metro
CCTV?
Manila?
Sasabihin mo, CDR, Bok, wala na CDR King.
CCTV.
May 168
Baka
naman.
bawat kwarto kasi may CCTV.
May Lazada.
Pero linawin lang natin, bakit biglang pumasok si Senator Binay doon sa hearing? At what point siya pumasok doon?
Kalagitnaan. Ma'am Abby, actually,
Ano yung nag-trigger sa kanya na bigla siyang pumasok? Kasi yun yung reklamo ni bakit ka biglang papasok-pasok dito, di ba? Yun ang reklamo ni Senator Alan eh. At what point yun? Ano yung trigger?
linawin lang natin Ma'am Abby, hindi na member ng komite si Senator Nancy.
Ah,
So, pero
yes,
pwede
yes.
naman siya talagang umatenda sa senator. So, okay lang yun. But, pumasok siya nung na-establish na paulit-ulit si Senator Alan and umayon yung DPWH na 852 days nang delayed ang construction even before sinuspend ni Senate President Jesus Cordero yan. So nung medyo lumabas na yon, tsaka yung mga sinasabing hindi nag-uusap ang Senate at tsaka yung designer, yun, bigla na lang, actually akala namin patapos na yung hearing. Kasi ano na yun pasado alas 3 ng hapon. Biglang dumating siya. So parang, oh no, eto na to. So ayun na nga. Ano nangyari na?
Alam mo, Mayan, medyo matagal-tagal na rin na panahon na hindi natin narinig si Senator Cayetano na humirit ng ganito, di ba? Alam mo naman, mabilis sa mga comeback nito ni Senator Alan Peter Cayetano, tsaka medyo masakit pag humirit. It's been some time, Mayan, no?
Oo. Sir, alam mo, naalala ko, I'm sure naalala mo rin, yung pinakahuli na talaga matatandaan mo, yung nagsagutan sila sa hearing ni Senator Trillanes, yung sinabihan siya ni Senator Trillanes, yun yung talagang kasagsagan Tsaka kung talagang debate, sanay talaga si Senator Alan. Pero siguro share ko na din sa inyo, story ko to mamaya sa Frontline Primetime Kung wag natin kalimutan, may ibang present na senador kahapon, si Senator Robin Padilla.
Nakita namin.
Sa footage natin. Sa footage natin, kain siya ng kain, di ba?
Yes.
Habang nagkakaroon ng debate. So tinanong ko siya, hindi ka, bakit habang hindi mo naman sinuspend agad? Sabi niya, time na nandun siya, ilang ibang senador. Kasi big one. Nung nagde-debate na yung dalawa, saka siya kumain. And of course, siyang nakitang muli, kumpis. Kita niya yung flat. Pero kasi nagpasuspend si Senator Robin Padilla, binilang ko, more than 30 minutes nang nagde-debate yung dalawa. Na ang sinabi kinausap ko rin Senate Majority Leader Tolentino, sabi niya, dapat hindi nangyari yun. Because from the start, dapat may nag-move na to suspend nung nagkakainitan pa lang.
Masarap yung
Was it within Senator Robin Padilla's prerogative to suspend, to ask for suspension? I mean, is he a member or a vice chairman of the committee?
He's a member, so he can.
Okay.
He can move to suspend. Pero tandaan din natin, Sir P, na nung nagpa-suspend siya kahapon, hindi rin in-acknowledge si Senator Alan. Sabi ni Senator Alan, hindi na, sabi niya, kasi patapos na rin naman kami, sabi niya. So, hindi ko rin alam kung pakikinggan siya kung sinuspend niya in the middle.
Oo, kasi mahirap nga rin na
Yung chairman,
mabilis yung palitan ng dalawa, I'm sure na overwhelmed din to mukhang nag-stress eating nga to si Senator Robin Padilla.
mukhang overwhelmed siya sa ibang bagay.
Kawawa rin.
Ang si Senator Tolentino as majority leader, kung nandun siya kahapon pero umalis siya agad because may mga visitor siya. Sana daw napadelete sa record ng Senate yung mga hindi masyadong magandang nasabi, like Lourdes ang pangalan mo, hindi Marites, nabuang ka na, Day.
Yun, pinaka-paborito ko, nabuang ka na, Day.
So medyo dapat daw napadelete yun.
Who
So
else
ano
was
na
in the
latest
room?
ngayon, Mayan? Ano na yung latest development dyan sa away ng dalawa? Kasi magpa-file nga daw ng complaint sa Ethics Committee. Considering lang naman. Ano yung pinakabago ngayon?
So far, yun yung pinakabago, Ma'am Ami, na ipapakuha ni Senator Nancy yung buong transcript. Ipapaaral niya sa legal team niya kung meron silang grounds para nga mag-file ng ethics complaint laban kay Senator Alan. So far, walang sagot si Senator Alan, kaya na pa rin kami nangungulit sa aming sa kanyang team. So hinihintay namin baka maihabol pa sa report for the prime time news.
Okay, Mayan, is there something to what Senator Nancy Binay has been saying na this is parang shadow boxing to in relation to the Taguig Makati turf war, territorial war. Is there something to that? I mean, we're hearing things like baka we might see a Binay run in Taguig. Is that in the horizon? Is there some possibility to that?
Hindi ko masabi, Sir P. Kasi kung si Senator Binay talaga kausap mo, kumbinsidong-kumbinsido siya na it's all about that it's all about politics. Pero si Senator Alan, with the backing of Senate President Chief, ang kanya is parang, teka muna, parang ang sinasabi niya ng Senator Alan dito is, bago tayo manita ng budget ng iba, tignan mo rin muna natin kasi yung budget ng building natin na parang overpriced sa 23B. Yan ang sinasabi ni Senator Alan. And halatang masama ang loob ni Senator Cayetano na sinabi ni Senator Nancy na it's all about politics. Kasi sabi niya, pa-interview ko ng pa-interview. Sabi niya, hindi ako nagpapa-interview. So, may ganun talagang
okay,
personal
may
silang
ganito
dalawa.
na lang. May ganito na lang. Senator Nancy Binay's term is ending. She has reached her term limit. What's her plan? Is she running in Makati? Or by some stretch of our imagination, will we see her running in Taguig?
So far, ang alam kong inclination niya ay to run in Makati as mayor.
Okay.
Yun.
Pero may andito sa nangyari ngayon. You think yung mas mukhang lalong madidelay yung construction, ano? Kasi si Chis Escudero nga sabi niya palagay ko, we cannot move in next year or even 2026 So mukhang totoo nga na, mukhang ano na yan, super delay na talaga yung building na yan.
Opo, super delayed, Ma'am Ami. Pero alam mo, triggered dyan sila, sila Senate President Escudero. Kasi sinasabi nila, bakit nyo kami ngayon mamadaliin sa pag-review? 852 days lang ang delayed yan So bigyan nyo kami ng time mag-review. Kasi 10 billion din itong pinag-uusapan natin. Yun.
Okay. Pero sa tingin ko sa huli, mahihirapan silang paliwanag yung 600 million na landscape.
Yes.
Kasi kung Carabao grass lang naman.
Well, can you imagine the impact of 600 million on agricultural
Totoong halamang makakain.
Agricultural budget pala sa Metro Manila, no?
versus landscaping. I'm being cynical.
Bigyan natin ng chance kasi ang sabi naman nila, ang pangako daw ng bagong Senado ay iconic, functional, at green building.
Green kasi.
Ayun yung
Kasi
green.
600 million yung landscaping Kaya green building yan. Mahal pala mag-green building. But honestly, when you talk about green, iconic, and sustainable, that's shorthand for expensive. Mahal yung mga ganun, Consultant fees alone, the design
Energy
alone.
saving yun,
just to be
hindi
able to
dahil
say
sa
na
marami kang
environment-friendly building mo. Di ba? Mahal yan.
Opo, totoo. Mahal naman talaga.
At more than half a billion.
There's a cost to it.
Napatanggal ng salamin si
Ayaw
Ed.
pabayaan ni Sir Ed talaga yung 600 million.
Okay, sige. Fertilizer na.
Maraming salamat, Mea Los Baños,
Thank you,
News 5
sir.
correspondent sa Senado. Over in the U.S., citizens are waking up to their Independence Day, but how united are Americans now? Here's CNN reporter Brian Abel.
It may appear that tomorrow is a day where Americans set aside their differences and come together to celebrate the country. But with such a divided country and a presidential election coming up, the majority of U.S. voters say they are not proud of the country today.
The 4th of July fireworks bursting high in the air, a symbol of celebration for the United States of America, and so often accompanied by the broad stripes and bright stars of U.S. pride. But 248 years since U.S. independence, many Americans aren't feeling patriotic.
Patriotism is defined really broadly as feeling pride or love for one's country.
A Fox News poll out this week shows a majority of voters in the U.S. are not proud of the country today. And American Studies professor Elizabeth Anker says much of how people feel has to do with our politics.
For instance, in the Democratic Party, do you feel that the government is in the service of helping citizens? What we see in people in the Republican Party, patriotism might be, is the U.S. the strongest country in the world?
Also driving down pride, a shift in generations.
One thing we've seen over the past couple decades, especially in the last decade, is that younger people who have really not been supportive of many of the national policies, even when it's for a party that they support.
What could boost back up American patriotism? Anchor says the country often comes together to find collective strength in the face of adversity.
Oftentimes, it's a sense of sacrifice, of everybody being involved in some way to fight for the greater good. For instance, after 9/11, people came together to help one another out.
And Anchor tells me there was a brief rise in patriotism when Barack Obama was elected, but we haven't seen a true sense of pride in over 2 decades since 9/11. In Washington, I'm Brian Abel reporting.
And yeah, let's bring in our favorite geopolitical analyst, Richard Hidarian. Richard, welcome back to Storycon.
Wait, akala ko
Hi,
favorite niyo
Richard.
si Kamusta ko? Akala ko favorite niyo si Ronald. Paano na?
Resident Pandit John.
Yun, ikaw yung geopolitical
Second
analyst.
favorite. Second.
Iba yung pandit, iba yung geopolitics.
Aba. Sige lang. Buti nga hindi ako nandyan nasa gitna. Medyo baka magbardagulan tayo ulit. Looking forward, yeah.
I don't want to start with the U.S. elections.
Yeah.
Can I start with something else?
We'll talk about the missiles.
Yeah, the missiles.
The missiles, first of all, July 1, let's backtrack a bit from Aimee, no? July 1, Putin mentioned, he took note, the deployment of the Typhoon missile system here in the Philippines by the United States, the first time outside of America, the United States. That sort of alarmed Putin and got him into telling his security and defense officials that we have to start developing our own missiles. And then yesterday, Senator Amy Marcos talking again about missiles. Possibly 25 spots in the Philippines or
including
could be targets of missiles from China.
Hypersonic missiles from China. At nakita daw niya yung yung plano.
So is this a missile arms race, Richard?
Yes, it's definitely the missile defense arms race in many ways. Katulad ng alam niyo, of course, naglapse na yung mga missile agreements, strategic missile agreements between Russia and the United States a few years ago during the Trump administration. So medyo lutang yung international arms regimes sa pagitan ng mga Moscow at saka Washington DC. Ito yung mga na-negotiate nung panahon pa ng Cold War, no, na nung superpower pang Russia. Having said that though, I'm not sure saan nakuha yung mga sinasabi na dozens of targets dito sa Pilipinas. 25. Sa TikTok ba nakuha yun or saan? But my point is, of course, I mean, if there's war, alam natin na ito target sa Pilipinas, diba? But it's not like we're war is gonna happen tomorrow or even the next year or so. That's the worst case scenario. Ang tanong ngayon is, how are we playing the deterrence game? How are we playing the balance of power or balance of missile power game right now? I think yun ang issue ngayon. Now, I'm of two minds here. Sa isang banda, I think it's none of Russia or Putin's business what the Philippines does with its relationship with the United States. We're a U.S. ally, right? And accordingly, based on our national interest, we can make decisions about what to do. Obviously, I think the calculation is there. If Philippines and Japan host more and more advanced missile defense systems, mahirapan ng China sumugod sa Taiwan. So in a way, this creates a balance, a new balance of terror or balance of missiles in the East Asian region, therefore less likely for Taiwan to be invaded. So in a sense, we're just balancing out what the Chinese are doing, which is putting all of these massive anti-cruise ballistic missile systems across their shorelines. So tatapatan lang yan. Having said that, another part of me is saying actually, Putin saying a thing or two there is probably also because na-frustrate siguro siya sa Pilipinas because he was cultivating a very good relationship with us during Duterte. Duterte visited them twice. We had a $300 million chopper deal with them. They wanted to sell us submarines. They had a defense attaché here. I covered all of those issues back in the day. And I dealt a lot with Russian experts throughout the years. Ang basa ko dito is actually, especially if Trump becomes the president next year, which is more probable than not, based on current trends, now ibang usapan na if Biden steps down and something else happens. I think there's going to be an opening for the Philippines to rebuild some element of rapport with Russia, because I think we can do what India and Vietnam are doing. Yes, true. Of course, we're a U.S. treaty ally, so because of U.S. sanctions, yung CATSA, so-called CATSA, it will be hard for us to buy weapon systems from Russia. But I think it will make sense for the Philippines to have some level of diplomatic engagement with Russia, because we have no territorial maritime disputes with Russia. And if there's one thing that I know about Russians is Russia cares about Russia. They may have great friendship with China, whatever, no limits friendship, but they also have very good relationship with Vietnam. Nakaribal ng China. They also have very good relationship with India, which is karibal ng China. And President Duterte deals with Russia because Russia has been helping Vietnam to develop its oil and gas resources in the South China Sea. So what I'm saying is that right now, syempre dahil sa Ukraine, dahil sa relationship natin sa US, medyo we had to recalibrate our relationship with Russia. But next year, especially if Trump wins, and Trump will most likely also push for some sort of detente with Putin and try to end the war in Ukraine, I think there could be an opening for the Philippines also to establish a reasonable relationship with Russia para hindi magkakaroon ng isang Russia-China axis in this part of the world with us essentially in Team US and other side of the fence. I think there's some room for us to play a mediating middle power role here in this part of the world.
Interesting.
Pero Richard, at this point, wala naman tayong problema with Russia, di ba? Although yun nga, hindi natuloy, they were offering, not formally, yung mga arms nila sa atin before. Actually, meron pa tayong cooperation sa kanila. They gave us yung mga COVID vaccines nila. Kaya lang nga ngayon, saka tatanong ko rin yan, no? Yung deployment ng missiles natin, does Russia even need that as an excuse? Talaga namang everyone is expecting them to build up their missiles. Dahil nga sa nangyayari sa Ukraine and Europe is closing in against them, they don't even need an excuse about missiles in the Philippines.
Well, I think
I'm not gonna use gaslight baka ma-triggers. But this is what the Russians do. I mean, after they invaded Ukraine, what did they think is gonna happen? Sweden and Finland, who have been neutral countries for a very long time, have joined NATO. Because naspook sila. China building up its missile capabilities and talking about invading Taiwan for unification. Well, obviously, we're going to react. Actually, all of us are reacting. Ang tanong ko naman dito is, our reaction could also be smart and calibrated. Okay. I think it makes sense for us to have some level of engagement with Russia, while cognizant of U.S. sanctions on Russia, while cognizant of what we believe in principle was wrong in terms of their invasion of Ukraine. So ang sinasabi ko lang dyan is, we don't have to be ally of Russia. We don't have to buy big weapon systems from them. They did provide us snipers. I think some of the weapons we use against ISIS and Daesh forces in Marawi. We export. So some big ticket defense deals I think are unlikely. But why not joint drills? No, why not? Let's have joint drills with Russia. Russia's had joint drills with ASEAN in the past. Some sort of a friendship drills. ASEAN, Russia again, in a sense that we will separate our stance in Europe. Obviously, we stand with Ukraine. We stand with, international law there. But at the same time, I think we have to be also like maybe similar to Vietnam and India, have a kind of a multi-aligned, balanced relationship. Although, as I said, because we are a U.S. treaty ally, major trickier for us in terms of how deep we can go with the Russians.
I mean, Richard, I understand from that Putin is looking at the deployment of the Typhoon missile system here in the Philippines. They're not alarmed about the deployment here in the Philippines, but Putin sees it as an indication of a possible deployment of these missile systems in Eastern Europe. Along the border.
Yeah, I think very good point. I actually didn't answer you directly on that. Ang big concern ni Putin is Poland, right? Ang
Finland,
big concern ni Putin
Finland
is
and Poland.
Deployment of certain American systems to Eastern Europe, which will negate the ability of Russia to strike back if ever sila yung tinira. Remember, what keeps peace between Russia and NATO is this mutual assured destruction scenarios. You hit us with nuclear weapons, we hit you with nuclear weapons. But if Poland has very advanced weapon systems like Typhoon among others, mahirapan ng Russia to strike back. And that will destroy the balance of missile power or terror they have. So I think yun yung more concerning Putin. I didn't make too much out of things in the Philippines. Like what? He's going to deploy missile systems to Vladivostok or, I don't know, Vietnam? I don't see that happening. So I think some people are just making too much noise out of some random stuff Putin is saying, or some people are making too much noise out. I don't know. They saw some TikTok thing na targeting of Philippines. So we have to be careful. As I said, no reason for panic, no reason for complacency, but a lot of reason for diplomatic creativity. So personally, I'm on all solidarity with Ukraine. I think we have done the good job in terms of supporting Ukraine different resolutions. At the same time, I think we have to be also open to making sure there will be no Russia-China axis in our part of the world.
Make
sure that Russia will be responsible.
Richard, isn't that too late? Because
ibang usapan na Europe.
You mentioned we have to make sure that there's no Russia-China axis, but Isn't that too late? Because there's already that friendship without limits, that alliance or partnership without limits between Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin, which was facilitated by the United States, right?
Yeah, so the big game of geopolitics over the past 100 years is the romance of the three powers or kingdoms, right? Russia, Soviet Union, or Tsarist Russia, China, and the United States. So we saw throughout history nag-evolve itong triangular relationship, right? So the best thing, for instance, the US did under Nixon and Kissinger was to drive the divide or actually exploit the divide between Soviet Union and China. I think Trump will try to do that again. I won't be surprised if Trump will try to strike a deal over Ukraine, end the war there, and then improve relations with Russia, and then try to
China.
end this strategic flirtation between Russia and China. Of course, they're going to say a lot of things, but at the end of the day, these are two superpowers who care for their own interests. These are two superpowers who have their own issues. Look at Siberia, look at Russia's own problems with China. One reason why they have a lot of their nuclear weapons facing east is not because of US or NATO. We know which country they're worried about. So I think that axis is definitely more solid than many Western analysts were dismissive of this is. But I think it's not the end of the story. Just look at how warm Putin was when he visited the Indians, who are no friend of China. When he visited Vietnam recently, just a few weeks ago, Vietnamese are not necessarily friends of China too. Russia wants also options. They don't want to be a factotum of China. They don't want to be just dependent on China. They want friends and allies, or at least they don't want to be a complete rogue state. And having some sort of a interaction with a country like the Philippines is a big diplomatic point for them. That's what love nila si Duterte nun eh.
Okay,
I'm not
Richard,
saying let's go Duterte, but I'm saying let's not go totally their enemy.
Richard, do I gather from what you've been saying is that a Trump presidency might be good insofar as it will attempt to divide Russia and China. Might be good for world peace, actually.
Well, again, if you're Ukrainian or you're from Europe, I think Trump is bad news.
Yeah, but
I think the discussion nowadays is Europe alone. But if you're in the Philippines, many people here, this is not necessarily my personal opinion. I have my own issues about, U.S. and democracy and all of that. But on a geopolitical level, I think him ending the war in Ukraine, him driving a wedge between China and Russia, or at least making sure that Axis doesn't fully solidify, could create some strategic dividends in our part of the world. Yeah.
Good for the Philippines. That's what they're saying. It might be good for the Philippines.
Yes. In theory, yes. And we should also adjust accordingly. If Trump is going to play the Moscow game, we should also establish some communication.
Because we have to remember, right,
Moscow, right?
Right. Richard, we have to remember during his first campaign, he was saying that Putin was somebody he could deal with. Trump was saying that Putin was somebody
Trump
he
says
could
he can deal with Russia, he can deal with Iran, he can deal with China. But I think of those three major powers, the karibal ng US, I think Russia will be the one that I'm very optimistic about compared to the other two. Optimistic not in the sense that I morally support it, optimistic in the sense that I think there's significant rapport between him and Putin to sort it out. Now, of course, others will make more out of this rapport.
Okay. Richard,
with what's happening now, after the debate, you think Trump has a greater chance? Wag mo nang pantinin yung mga surveys. Ikaw lang, personally, basa mo. Will Trump, fearless forecast, meron ba? May pag-asa ba? Manalo? November.
I think Trump, maybe Trump did too well. Although, of course, if you paid attention to some of the things he said, you're not sure. But I think he said he just did too well. So ngayon, baka ma-replace talaga si Biden. I think there's a probably the probability is more than 50% na Kamala Harris or someone else might step in. Because it's going to be very hard. Biden, he makes one more mistake, I think it's over. It will be almost impossible for him to sustain it. And so the polls are very worrying. And we see that behind the scenes, even Obama and other Democratic stalwarts are suggesting baka we have to look at alternatives now. So maybe Trump, Pyrrhic victory ang nangyari dito. Maybe he's now going to force the Democrats to come up with an alternative, much younger, much more vigorous, and much more competitive.
Pero hindi ba magmumukhang kulilat yung mga Democrats if they pull out at this point?
4th of July. They're embarrassed about their country.
Battle of the aged daw, sabi ni Battle of the aged. No, I mean, I'm still recovering from that debate. Alam ni Patrick yan. But very interesting times. I think a lot of fluidity there. Kaya nga tayo mga Pilipino, wag lang tayong umaasa ng anong gusto ng Amerika. Isipin din natin ang maganda sa ating national interest. We have no territorial maritime disputes with Russia. I condemn what happened in Ukraine, but I think we have to have reasonable relationship with all major powers, not only the United States.
Okay. Which we're seeing India doing, right, Richard?
Which is India doing, which is what Vietnam is doing. I think India is even a more interesting case because they're a democracy like us, right? So mas nakaka-relate ako sa India kaysa Vietnam because Vietnam is a communist country. So I think India is showing the way that for democracies like us, we can have very good relationship with the US. We are a democracy, but that should not prevent us from multi-alignment, meaning having reasonable relationship with many powers. Now, of course, unlike India, we are a treaty ally. So even may limitations yan. But as I said, it shouldn't be like level 10 Duterte and then 0. Why not level 4 out of 10? Some sort of relationship with Russia. Some drills, some communication channels, some strategic flirtation in our part of the world while we hold the line on the Ukraine issue na mali talagang invasion ng Ukraine. And it's doable. I mean, if you're really a smart, strategically mature country, you can juggle it all. That's what Vietnam and India have been doing all this time.
Richard,
Why can't we do it?
I
We should be able
understand
to
that
do it.
we saw that kind of diplomacy, foreign policy during Marcos I.
Yes,
We were a
and
treaty
Marcos
ally with
I
MDT,
was one of the
but we had
first
relationship
countries to
with
normalize relations with China. And guess who,
and all
and
communist
guess who,
countries.
Patrick, oversaw that? It was Bongbong Marcos and Imelda in 1974
Imelda,
who met Mao Zedong to set the tone
Well,
for the
not
father's
only that,
visit the
Richard.
next year.
Remember, the former president would send his wife. Okay, he might not be able to do it himself because of he was tied as a treaty ally of the United States. His hands were tied. We had bases here, but he would send his wife to Libya,
And his
to
son.
Cuba,
And his son.
to all the
Yeah,
axis
exactly.
of evil back then during the Cold War, no, to Romania and
I
all
think,
that.
Patrick, shuttle diplomacy could be one way. If there's one person that's sophisticated who can deal with different countries, who probably speaks different languages, if Marcos can find someone like that, a special envoy guy or lady, to go all around, whether it's Moscow, whether it's Beijing, whether it's Tehran, whatever, and make sure to see our options are open, why not? Why not? I mean, Bongbong Marcos, if there's one thing I believe he should copy from his father is foreign policy dexterity.
right.
I'm not a fan of Marcos Sr.'s domestic politics, but his foreign policy, was really global statesmanship. And back then, we were a much poorer country. We're a much less developed country. We're now a middle power almost. So why not? Why not? So thank you for pointing that out. That's an important precedence that could serve as an inspiration for Marcos Jr., who I think is quite a sophisticated guy in terms of understanding global affairs. Yun lang, marami mga dito sa Pilipinas na parang Team China, Team US lang inisip nila. Dapat we go beyond that. Pangbata yun eh. That's a puerile strategic mindset. We have to be a sophisticated country, look beyond, diversify, while, of course, standing our ground on the South China Sea issue, on the West Philippine Sea issue, and of course, continue to condemn what happened in Ukraine.
I just like to point out, Richard, Marcos I also cut the lease of the bases from 99 years to 25. That was an important thing.
And,
also, I think that's what he said.
And he juiced out the Americans. He juiced out the Americans. He made sure, you're going to have bases here. You paid for that, right? Nothing for free. Ang pinaka-sinigurado ni Marcos Sr. is that will not be taken for granted and will not offer ourselves on the cheap. I think yun yung naging concern ko sa mga iba't ibang Filipino leaders. They offered themselves too cheaply to either US or China. That's not good for the Philippines. That undermines our...
In fact, paalala ko lang, Beijing remembers actually that Imelda Marcos, during the time of the first President Marcos, she was the one who established ties with China. Natatandaan nila yan. And I think they mentioned it to President Marcos.
Well, she was best friends,
The new President Marcos.
She was best friends with a lot of dictators from that era. Remember Fidel Castro, Ceausescu, Gaddafi.
There was an element of glamour diplomacy too.
Right.
I mean,
she
Imelda
wowed
being glamorous,
the former
being
First
with
Lady
Empress of
would
Iran, being with the Queen of Thailand. And
baka wala
glamour
ganun
is part of diplomacy of Marcos's. Yeah.
Yung missiles, may clarification ng National Security Council. Sabi nila, they are not detecting any kind of threat na yung binabanggit na yan. Now, missiles aimed at us.
Hindi ko pa rin nasagot, Amy. Well, we still don't know ano ba talaga yung kwento ng typhoon. I'm sure probably some other guys know it better. Kasi hanggang ngayon, mystery pa rin eh. Deploy ba siya? Dumaan lang ba siya dito? Andito pa rin ba siya, di ba?
Wala namang bala, Richard.
Iniwanan for the Balita.
Yung launcher lang, walang kasamang bala.
We can use it to our advantage.
Walang kasamang bala.
We can use
to
it
be
to our
fair,
advantage.
diba? The typhoon came here without any missile on it.
Strategic ambiguity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, no. Ang point ko is, you tell China, or even Russia for that, but Russia, I don't want to make too much out of what Putin said. China talagang issue dito, di ba? You say to China, no, we're not deploying it yet unless you give us more reason to deploy it. Again, leverage it. Kasi kung wala ka naman leverage, bakit ka re-respetuhin ng China? Kaya when people say, oh, we need diplomacy with China, I say, yeah, water is wet. Like, okay, of course we need diplomacy with China, but on what terms? What is our leverage? What is our bargaining chip? Our bargaining chip is the access we can offer the Americans. It's all of these missile defense systems, etc. So I'm saying, use that as a leverage. Be ambiguous about it, but not just ambiguous for the sake of ambiguity, strategically exploit that for our national interest. Dapat ganun tayo mag-isip. We have to be serious people. This is a serious, scary, uncertain world. And if Trump wins next year, it's going to be even more uncertain and potentially scary. But also opportunities will come with that. Kaya we have to be prepared. We have to be fluid. And that's why I appreciate these discussions. Because we're looking at, hindi pwede na ideological ka lang na ito lang pwede or ito lang pwede. You adjust to the circumstances, and the circumstances are shifting on a daily basis almost in our part of the world.
Okay.
Sorry,
very quickly,
okay.
we also have our own hypersonic missiles ready, courtesy of India and the joint venture with Russia, the BrahMos. It arrived in April.
Yeah.
BrahMos is supersonic. No. BrahMos is supersonic. But because meron na tayong BrahMos, I think Mach 4 lang yata yun or something, we will be in a good position to get the hypersonic version ng BrahMos. So level 1, level 2 lang yan. So we may also have access to well, Russian-made almost, di ba? Kasi yung BrahMos, Soviet-Indian project yan, di ba?
Right.
So actually, we're preparing ourselves. We will have also our hypersonic. But anyway, I don't know about a certain senator, pero yung hypersonic missile na yan is still in the exploratory initial stage. Its efficacy in the battlefield is still up for debate. From what I understand, it was used by Russia in Ukraine, but it has not been as effective and scary as many people said. But in theory, hypersonic missiles are harder to detect and to shut down because their trajectory is more out of, I don't know, whatever people saw on TikTok about targets in the Philippines and all. Medyo war agad. Bakit ganun tayo mag-isip war agad? Mas nagpapatakot tayo ng sarili natin. That's not a smart way of approaching international affairs.
Okay, thanks for joining the Storycon this Thursday. Richard Hadarian, our resident geopolitical analyst. Thank you, Richard.
Thanks, Richard.
Salamat, guys.
And
Thanks,
thanks for
Ed,
joining.
Amy, and
Thank you.
Patrick.
Thanks for joining Storycon today. Ami Pamintuan, Editor-in-Chief of the Philippine Star. Join us again tomorrow at 4 p.m. for the Storycon. I'm Ed Lingao.
I'm Patrick Paez. We are One News, all sides, all the time. This is the Story Conference Group or the Storycon Group.